Adaptación, in charge of the reconstruction of the main areas that were damaged, with an original budget of 4.8 billion. This I say original because this is a moving target. It has changed, has increased over time, and they also most of the reconstruction went to housing. Most of the funds, housing and roads. So Colombia is, if you go to Colombia, as Alberto will go this week, you will notice how all the improvements that we have now there in terms of roads, and also 5 what they call risk mitigation mega projects. The Dique Canal was one of the other major disasters in the Atlantic coast, a canal that was built by the Spaniards, broke and flooded like around 7 municipalities of the Department of Atlantic. La Mojana is another region in the Caribbean area that is always have problems with flooding every year, but with the La Niña 2010-2011, the floods were as never before. So the construction of an environment in the city of Cali and the reconstruction of Gramalote. That it was originally allocated $85 billion, but it represented only a small portion of what Fondo de Adaptación has been managing. And the other one is, the other case is even smaller. So let's zoom in the Gramalote. So first, let's look what happened with Gramaloteros. So here we have data from 2 different census with different methodologies. Imperfect both, they didn't match, but it's the only data that we have. So, but it gave us a general idea of what happened with people. So in early 2011, around 63% of Gramaloteros were located in the city of Cúcuta, the capital of Norte de Santander. 7.5% still remain somewhere in Gramalote, and 28% were located in other towns in the same department. So basically, around 99% of Gramaloteros stayed in the Department of Norte de Santander. So the other census toward the end of 2000, it shows some changes. Still, almost half of the Gramaloteros living in Cúcuta. More people have moved back to Gramalote, in part because there is one neighborhood called La Lomita that 35 houses remain intact. So some people went back to live there. So again, in 2012, we can find that still 99% of Gramaloteros remain in the area, and only 2 people cross the border. So this is one of the most dramatic images of the destruction of the town. Gramalote is a very traditional, conservative society. The Catholic Church have a very important place there. So people are saving the images from the church. So part of the destruction. This is a picture that I took in this neighborhood of La Lomita that was not destroyed. So in the study, for those who might be interested, I kind of pay a lot of attention on the details of the relocation process, and for analytical purposes, I I divided the relocation in different stages, mostly keeping in mind was the entity managing the relocation, so we can see that has been a lot of change. So in the preparatory stage, So we can see that the desire of the Colombian government to do right, to support Gramaloteros with the housing needs, and they offer the alternative of building shelters or provide rent subsidies. Most of the Gramaloteros prefer the option of rent subsidies. Some people say that in part because at some point some government official from Colombia Humanitaria mentioned that if shelters were built, Gramalote will not be relocated. So the fear of that made that a lot of people selected rent subsidies. But also rent subsidies is not a bad option for a lot of people. Allow people to move and stay wherever they want. What I heard from Gramaloteros is the amount that is paid, that I don't remember the exact amount at this moment, but it's in the report, is not that bad, it's not that good either. And the government has also offering food on a monthly basis. So the government in this stage approved $1 million to hire an entity to manage the feasibility study for the relocation. Also, we can see a lack of understanding among functionaries at the national level and many people in Gramalote about the complexity of finding the place to relocate Gramalote in an area where the geology of the area is very complex. A lot of faults and similar situations that might cause another mass movement. And also during this period, the mayor of Gramalote was facing his own legal problems. A few months after the tragedy, he was forced to resign as a result of a judicial decision. And 2 provisional mayors were appointed. So even making the whole process of relocation even more complicated. So the second, the stage number 1, we can say that May 2011 really marked the beginning of the relocation of Gramalote with the hiring of Servivienda to be in charge of those feasibility studies. Servivienda is an NGO founded by the Jesuits that specialize on housing for the poor and have a lot of experience, have been around for 25 years or perhaps longer, but they have never been involved in a project as ambitious as this. The main focus of this first stage was to find the right place to relocate the town, and finally, based on the studies that Servivienda did with collaboration with the state agencies, it was decided that a site called Pomaroso was the best one to relocate the town, and the Ministry of Housing announced it. But after that announcement was made, suddenly everything froze for almost 5 months. No one was saying anything about that. And on March 2012, the Ministry of Housing made this surprise announcement that more studies were required to be certain that that site, Pomaroso, was indeed the best site. So there were several rumors that why the government was walking out of this decision, and some people say that were for political reasons, others that were for economical reasons, like the fact that this the proposal that Servivienda put together, and they hope to carry during the entire process to lead the relocation. It will cost more than $186 million, and as I mentioned before, it was allocated only $85 million. So on stage number 2, in April 2012, Fondo de Adaptación that finally started operating took charge of the Gramalote project. They have an intersectoral commission from different ministries. It was dissolved because Fondo de Adaptación was assigned to lead the project. They hired a very competent international expert, a Colombian but international expert on resettlement locations. Something called the Working Group on Gramalote was created. It's not totally clear who had the initiative. As someone told me there, if you ask the mayor will say it was my initiative. If you are from the Adaptación, they will say no, the idea was ours. But so this working group on Gramalote was originally comprised by the mayor of Gramalote, the municipal ombudsman, the president of the city council, a representative from the governor's office, and the Catholic priest, and representative from Fondo de Adaptación. An action plan for the relocation was approved that provide guidance, and several studies, other studies, surveys, census were hired. An university in Cucuta was hired for that, those studies. New geological studies, this time by the Colombian Geotechnical Society, other environmental studies that were done by Conservation International, and all of them concluded that the best site was not the Pomarroso site, but another site called Miraflores, and the Fondo de Adaptación called a public meeting in Cucuta on October 30, 2012, and declared that that was the best site. Gramaloteros obviously were extremely angry and frustrated because it was a few months ago the government has selected a different site, and so people were, the community was divided. Some people say that they will not go to that site, that the Gramalote have to be in the first site that was selected. And that created almost a year passed without any major progress in the relocation. So here, this is the cost analysis that was done, and that shows this was done by Fondo de Adaptación. The Pomarroso site was the most expensive one, costing around 167 million, and Miraflores was the cheapest one. So perhaps that obviously also was part of the equation, but it seems that the geological situation of that site was better than the other ones. So the second stage, the Fondo de Adaptación hired stage 3. Fondo de Adaptación hired a private company, a multinational company, ACOM, to manage the project. They also hired the University of Pamplona to take care of the social component of the relocation. And things little by little started to improve and move around and move in the right direction. So, but there were other hurdles in the process, legal and administrative, that also delayed the project. Several important milestones happened in this stage. The urban designs of the new municipality were done. A final list of families of an inventory of properties and right holders of the new Gramalote, and the architectural designs. This is the design of the town. This is the cultural center. It was a contest, and several Colombian architects to select the best designs. The nursing home, the peasant's house, the public market, the new school, the new sport facility, and the final stage is the current one. I think has been signed February 2015, when Fondo de Adaptación started takes the management of the relocation. It was a very ugly controversy about the church in Gramalote. But the most important thing is that the relocation plan was finally released, and the specific rights of Gramaloteros in the relocation process were finally spelled out. The Fondo de Adaptación for that process sidelined the voice of the working group on Gramalote, and obviously they were very frustrated with this restrictive approach that the Fondo de Adaptación had. And construction began really only in April 2015. So I visited Gramalote at the beginning of March, and it was interested I was talking to Gramaloteros, and people were very skeptical about the entire relocation because they had not seen anything until that moment. The Miraflores site was an empty lot, and people were not trusting the government that the town will be reconstructed. So in the relocation plan that it was finally published a few months ago, so we can see the specific rights. So if we divide, to simplify, two main groups, the owners and the renters. There are around 604 owners and 504 renters. So the government decided that it will provide a housing solution for the owners. It will replace all the houses of the owners, but not for all the renters. The 380 houses will be built. It will be free for as well, but it will be a public lottery of who will be beneficiaries. So that shows that after the relocation, it will be a housing deficit of 124 families. That's around 11% of the families that were victims.
Can I interrupt, Carlos?
Yeah.
Why the decision to build fewer rental housing than existed before?
Yeah, I think that at this moment the decision is entirely economic decision. Like even the government decided that those 604 houses will be built with funds from the Fondo de Adaptación, and those houses will be built with funds from the Ministry of Housing. And I don't know if the Ministry of Housing only have money for that number of people, but that was decided. What I have noticed talking to people, to the mayor and other actors of the Gramalote, the working group on Gramalote, is that they're very pragmatic and they have not really kind of do a fight on this. It's like, okay, like this is not perfect, we didn't approve this, we were not part of the decision of doing it this way, but we want to see the government to move on in the process, and when things are advanced, when we see that the government is really building houses, so it will be a time to do this fight. So people are kind of waiting, and I think it's very savvy what they are doing. Obviously, this might create a lot of problems. So let me move. Oh, this is when I visited the site of Miraflores. I took that picture. I was located in the upper part of the town, where the only thing that you can see is that some machinery building an aqueduct, a water plant, and this is how it looks now. This is a picture that a newspaper published. So the previous picture, I took it from there, and so now you can see, and this picture is probably 2 months old, so more things have been done. Some of the lessons learned, I think that There is a need for a broad roadmap to guide a plan relocation process. The different actors involved in the affected community need legal policy and planning framework to guide a relocation process. Like one key issue that could be included would be like clear criteria for when relocation of communities after disaster should occur. We learned, and one of the things that Gramaloteros were more frustrated with the government officials at the beginning was that a lot of people, a lot of those functionaries questioned the need to relocate Gramalote. Like people that said, like, why we have to rebuild a town with only 1,100 families? So we think that even though that this is a legitimate question, that answer should not be left on the hands of a handful of functionaries who lack an understanding of the local cultures and the town's significance for its inhabitants. Second lesson, obviously, that land is at the center of any relocation project process in several important ways. The Gramalote case shows that selecting a new site for a planned relocation is far more complicated than it seems. Purchasing the land of the selected relocation is a time-consuming process. The government pay, one site was selected, negotiated with the owners, pay them, and that takes time. Even if the government have the legal instruments to force this is a process that is very slow. The definition of land and housing rights and a new relocation site is also very complex. So obviously the third lesson learned is the need to have a clear time frame and visible milestone in a relocation project. Unfortunately, any relocation project takes time. So climate displaced people would like to see the resettlement plan implemented as soon as possible in order to find a new place to live. And obviously, people that are planning would prefer to follow a more cautious approach. But definitely, visible milestones are needed. People cannot hang on promises. They need real, tangible milestone that our relocation is going on. The fourth one, the importance of participatory governance model to guide the relocation process. The need to have a visible and consistent manager of the relocation. The important role of local and regional actors in the process. And that definitely relocation, planned relocation is more than a housing project. Relocating a community, relocating a town is far more complicated. You need to rebuild livelihoods of people, not only build houses, and that takes time and effort. And relocation is a complex process requiring multi-sectoral response. So the conclusion, La Niña was an unprecedented climatic event. The response of the Colombian government was also unprecedented in terms of what the ambition, what was done, and the ambition of the reconstruction effort. The people of Gramalote have gone through significant trauma due to the destruction of the town and their livelihoods. This is something that it's something that I unfortunately I didn't mention much, but it's what we should always keep in mind: the suffering of the people during 5 years, waiting, and the anguish of if their lives will be restored and if they can go back to their town. We think that this resettlement process has a lot of potential to be successful despite all the problems. And the resettlement, we also think that is in a crossroad. If the governance model that has been used with the working group of Gramalote is respected, there's a big chance, or there's a bigger chance that the relocation being successful. However, if this governance model and if the Fondo de Adaptación definitely decide not to take into account the local actors, there is a big risk of another failure. So my apologies for being too long, and if there are comments or questions, please.
From your pictures and stories, I tried to conjecture what actually happened. And I imagine it may well have been a single weather event over a few days with little wind, very little wind, but not intensive rainfall, but very protected and then overall abundant rainfall. And then with the soil being largely volcanic ash anyway, it was very vulnerable to whatever accumulated there. Is that the right track?
Yeah, it is said that this type of events are triggered by extreme rain. But it was a combination of things, including a small local earthquake that happened. So it was a small earthquake in the area. There are some faults so the conclusion was definitely the rain was a factor. The trigger, everything was the rain. But the combination of everything, and obviously like the environment, the lack of or the environmental degradation of the area also play a role there.
But it was really, then you could say, a 3-4 day event, and that was a disaster.
It was, well, people say it was a 2-day event. I mean,
even 2 days.
2 days, yeah.
So
yeah, 16 and December 16 and 17.
Don't blame it all on La Niña. But
yeah, and 17 people have to relocate it. So, Sarah?
Yeah, I have a couple questions. I wondered with the, I mean, I know that they haven't built anything yet, but theoretically, the buildings they're going to build and the infrastructure, are they building it all sort of trying to take into account potential for more of these natural disasters? Is that partly why things are going to cost more?
This is part of the idea of the approach of Fondo de Adaptación. Fondo de Adaptación was decided, or the government, the conclusion was because of the changes in the climate system created this big mess. Any reconstruction should take into account all that, so that this do not happen. So that also helped to explain why everything took longer. There had been a lot of studies, and every movement in the process, trying to have, and to be perfectly honest, trying to hire the best minds, the best experts in each single area to work on that. But again, you have the reality that people are displaced and eager to go back to, and they don't see anything, and with many additional problems.
Yeah, I think the Gramalote case is really fascinating. But I think it raises a question for me and a concern that is like along those lines, and it's like we don't see in the framework that you showed, and even in the governmental policies, something about prevention, and like not so much for who is being relocated, but like who hasn't been in that position yet but could, because we know that climate change and this phenomenon of Niña are going to get more unstable with the time, and because of like thinking from an ecological point of view, Colombia and the ecosystems, like La Mojana is a really unstable place. So like, I don't know if this is something that it needs to be work or more, but about prevention, what has been done so far to prevent this? Because so far, I'm kind of like citing Gabriel Garcia Marquez. It seems like a crónica de la migración anunciada. You know, like it's just gonna continue to be like this if we don't have some policies that are directed towards prevention.
Well, my answer would be that I have seen that after all these events, there is an effort to create a culture of prevention. In fact, the entity in charge of, and Hermancho help me to remember the name because I don't, in charge of disaster, in charge of disaster management, I think like around 7 municipalities of the Department of Atlantic. La Mojana is another region in the Caribbean area that is always have problems with flooding every year, but with the La Niña 2010-2011, the floods were as never before. So the construction of an environment in the city of Cali and the reconstruction of Gramalote. That it was originally allocated $85 million, but it represented only a small portion of what Fondo de Adaptación has been managing. And the other one is, the other case is even smaller. So let's zoom in the Gramalote. So first, let's look at Adaptación, in charge of the reconstruction of the main areas that were damaged, with an original budget of 4.8 billion. This I say original because this is a moving target. It has changed, has increased over time, and they also most of the reconstruction went to housing. Most of the funds, housing and roads. So Colombia is, if you go to Colombia, as Alberto will go this week, you will notice how all the improvements that we have now there in terms of roads, and also 5 what they call risk mitigation mega projects. The Dique Canal was one of the other major disasters in the Atlantic coast, a canal that was built by the Spaniards, broke and flooded. Some changes. Still, almost half of the Gramaloteros living in Cucuta. More people have moved back to Gramalote, in part because there is one neighborhood called La Lomita that it didn't, 35 houses remain intact. So some people went back to live there. So again, in 2012, we can find that still 99% of Gramaloteros remain in the area, and only 2 people cross the border. So this is one of the most dramatic images of the destruction of the town. What happened with Gramaloteros? So here we have data from 2 different census with different methodologies. Imperfect both, they didn't match, but it's the only data that we have. So, but it gave us a general idea of what happened with people. So in early 2011, around 63% of Gramaloteros were located in the city of Cúcuta, the capital of Norte de Santander. 7.5% still remain somewhere in Gramalote, and 28% were located in other towns in the same department. So basically, around 99% of Gramaloteros stayed in the Department of Norte de Santander. So the other census toward the end of 2000, it showed Gramalote is a very traditional, conservative society. The Catholic Church have a very important place there. So people are saving the images from the church. So part of the instruction. This is a picture that I took in this neighborhood of La Lomita that was not destroyed. So in the study, for those who might be interested, I kind of pay a lot of attention on the details of the relocation process, and for analytical purposes, I can I divided the relocation in different stages, mostly keeping in mind was the entity managing the relocation, so we can